In August 2025, President Donald Trump announced sweeping tariffs on a wide range of imported goods. The move marked a dramatic break from decades of global trade norms. The White House claimed the goal was to protect American industries and jobs. Instantly, the world economy was thrown into uncertainty. For more than 70 years, U.S. presidents from both major political parties have consistently championed the idea of global free trade. This approach was rooted in the belief that open markets and international cooperation would not only boost the American economy, but also promote peace and stability around the world. Leaders like Franklin D. Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and Ronald Reagan all played pivotal roles in shaping a world order where the United States stood at the forefront of economic globalization, forging alliances and building bridges with other nations. To support this vision, the U.S. helped create powerful institutions such as the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. These organizations were designed to set the rules of global commerce, resolve disputes, and encourage countries to work together for mutual benefit. American leadership was instrumental in establishing these frameworks, which have governed international trade for decades and contributed to unprecedented global economic growth. However, with the election of Donald Trump, there was a dramatic departure from this long-standing tradition. Trump's America First tariffs marked a bold and controversial break from the past. Instead of working through international institutions and established rules, his administration imposed sweeping tariffs on a wide range of goods, often acting unilaterally and bypassing the very systems the U.S. had helped create. Unlike previous tariffs, which were typically used as temporary bargaining chips in trade negotiations, these new measures were broader in scope, higher in value, and targeted not just rivals, but even America's closest allies. This aggressive approach sent shockwaves through the global trading system, straining relationships with partners like Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. The Trump administration argued that decades of globalization and free trade had hollowed out American manufacturing, leading to factory closures, job losses, and declining communities across the country. They claimed that previous policies had prioritized multinational corporations and foreign interests over American workers and industries. The new policy aimed to reverse these trends by pressuring companies to bring production and jobs back to the United States. By making it more expensive to import goods, the administration hoped to encourage investment in American factories, create new employment opportunities, and restore the nation's industrial base. This shift signaled a profound and potentially long-term move toward economic self-reliance and national independence. It reflected a growing sentiment among many Americans that the country should prioritize its own interests and rebuild its economic strength from within. The world is now on notice. After decades of playing by the old rules, the United States has charted a new course. The era of unquestioned global free trade is over, and both allies and rivals alike must adapt to a new reality where American interests come first. The EU, America's top trading partner, is hit hard. Tariffs make European goods, cars, luxury items, machinery, far pricier in the US, threatening jobs and growth. The sense of betrayal is deep as decades of transatlantic partnership unravel. The EU's unity is tested. Germany, with its car industry, suffers more than others. Some members want to retaliate, others fear escalation. Brussels must balance showing strength with avoiding a trade war. Legal challenges at the WTO are slow and uncertain. Retaliatory tariffs are risky, but may be unavoidable. In a time of global uncertainty and shifting alliances, French President Emmanuel Macron has seized the moment, using the current crisis as a catalyst to champion a bold new vision for Europe. Macron is not simply reacting to events, he is actively shaping the conversation, urging the continent to embrace what he calls European strategic autonomy. This concept, once a distant ideal, is now at the forefront of European political debate, thanks in large part to Macron's persistent advocacy. Macron argues that Europe can no longer afford to be overly dependent on the United States for its security, nor on fragile global supply chains for its essential goods. The war in Ukraine, energy crises, and recent disruptions in global trade have exposed vulnerabilities that Macron believes Europe must urgently address. He insists that true sovereignty means having the capacity to defend itself, secure its own borders, and ensure the resilience of its industries and infrastructure. To achieve this, Macron has called for a sweeping Buy European Act, echoing similar policies in the US, to prioritize European products and services. He envisions major investments in critical sectors, such as semiconductors, green energy, and advanced manufacturing, to ensure Europe's competitiveness and independence in the decades ahead. This is not just about economics. It's about securing Europe's place in a rapidly changing world. Macron wants Europe to protect itself with smart tariffs and a robust industrial policy, enabling the continent to compete on equal footing with economic giants like the US and China. He argues that without these measures, Europe risks falling behind in the global race for innovation, jobs, and security. This approach marks a significant shift away from the free market ideals that have long defined the European Union. Instead, Macron is advocating for a more pragmatic, protective stance, one that balances open markets with the need to safeguard European interests and values. Macron's vision is gaining traction across the continent, as the risks of dependency on foreign powers become increasingly clear to both policymakers and the public. The conversation is no longer about whether Europe should pursue greater autonomy, but about the best path forward and the speed at which these changes can be implemented. The debate has shifted decisively. Now, the central question is not if Europe should become more autonomous, but how quickly it can build the institutions, industries, and alliances needed to realize this vision. The urgency is palpable, and the stakes are high. Through his leadership and clear sense of purpose, Emmanuel Macron has positioned himself as the architect of a new European future, one where the continent stands strong, united, and sovereign in the face of global challenges. His plan is ambitious, but for many, it is exactly what Europe needs at this pivotal moment in history. In recent months, French President Emmanuel Macron has emerged as a vocal advocate for greater European autonomy. His vision is bold, a Europe that stands on its own, less reliant on outside powers, and more assertive on the global stage. But this push for autonomy is not without controversy. Macron's stance has exposed deep divisions within the European Union, as member states struggle to agree on the best path forward. The unity that once defined the EU is now showing visible cracks, with leaders openly disagreeing on fundamental issues. France, Italy, and Spain have formed a powerful bloc, calling for strong retaliation against perceived economic threats and advocating for a more independent Europe. They argue that only by taking decisive action can the EU protect its industries and citizens from external pressures, whether from the United States, China, or other global competitors. These countries believe that a united front and robust policies are essential to safeguard Europe's future prosperity and security. On the other hand, Germany, the Netherlands, and the Nordic states are urging caution. They worry that aggressive measures could spark a damaging trade war, harming European businesses and jobs. For them, diplomacy and negotiation remain the preferred tools. They emphasize the importance of maintaining open markets and international cooperation, warning that protectionism could backfire and isolate Europe from the global economy. Across the continent, the debate is not limited to politicians. Some citizens and business owners see protectionism as a necessary shield against unfair competition and job losses. Others fear that such policies will drive up prices, reduce choices for consumers, and ultimately weaken Europe's competitiveness on the world stage. The tension is palpable, with protests and heated discussions becoming increasingly common. The effectiveness of the European Union has always depended on its ability to act as a unified bloc. But as disagreements deepen, reaching consensus is proving more difficult than ever. The image of a fractured Europe is becoming harder to ignore, raising questions about the EU's ability to respond to future challenges. At its core, this debate is about much more than trade policy. It's a struggle over Europe's identity, values, and long-term direction. Should the EU double down on integration and solidarity, or should it prioritize national interests and self-sufficiency? The answer will shape not only Europe's economic future, but also its role in the world. The central question remains: should the European Union become a fortress, closing itself off to protect its own, or should it work to repair and strengthen the global trading system? Each path carries risks and opportunities, and the choice will have lasting consequences for generations to come. As European leaders debate, the world is watching closely, especially the United States. The lack of a clear, unified answer from the EU creates uncertainty, and this vulnerability is something that outside powers, like the US, can and will exploit to their advantage. The stakes for Europe have never been higher. US tariffs are reshaping alliances, pushing Europe to look beyond America. Macron leads outreach to China, seeking new markets and investment. This pivot is pragmatic, but controversial. Many Europeans fear dependence on Beijing. China welcomes the rift, eager to expand its influence in Europe. The US views Europe's China ties with suspicion, threatening further measures. Europe is caught between two superpowers, trying to protect its interests. The EU's internal divisions complicate its foreign policy. The global balance of power is shifting, and Europe must adapt quickly. The US-EU trade conflict sends shockwaves worldwide. Germany, reliant on exports, urges caution and fears job losses. Switzerland and other non-EU countries are caught between major trading partners. Emerging economies like India see both risks and opportunities, hoping to attract investment but wary of tariffs. Brazil eyes gains if EU retaliates against US agriculture, but fears global instability. China sees a chance to strengthen ties with Europe, but worries about a global slowdown. Countries everywhere are recalibrating alliances and trade strategies. The world is bracing for a new era of uncertainty. The trade dispute accelerates the fragmentation of the global order. Regional blocs are rising. Europe seeks cohesion. Asia deepens ties through deals like RCEP. Alliances are now pragmatic and issue-based, not permanent. Nations may cooperate on one front and compete on another. The world is becoming more competitive and unpredictable. Rival power blocs are forming, with the US, EU, and China at the center. Competition extends to technology and finance, not just trade. The risk of conflict and miscalculation is higher than it's been in decades. Europe faces a crossroads: retaliate or de-escalate, align with the US, or pursue autonomy. Retaliation risks a damaging trade war. Caution may invite more US pressure. Strategic alignment is at stake. Remain a junior partner or become a distinct power. The world could split into rival blocs, with supply chains and alliances redrawn. Europe's choices will shape its future and the global order. The comfortable certainties of the past are gone. Leaders must protect interests and unity in a turbulent world. The stakes for Europe and the world could not be higher.